Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. And today we're getting into the subject of, there's another dating subject in terms of that space. The topic came up recently. This topic's come up before, but where we asked the question as far as, is there a play phase, especially and particularly for women, because I would hear a couple of different, I've seen a couple of different videos and a couple of different, just different points of media that keep referencing this, telling women that there's a play phase and, take advantage of your play phase, or, maybe different dating channels that would on YouTube or social media or whatever cases that would talk about things like where someone's like, yeah, I had my play phase or blah, blah, and then now I'm ready to kind of settle in this and that. And I wanted to speak on why there is no play phase, or at least that they say to women that there's a play phase, and why there actually is no play phase, and break down that dynamic. Now, a lot of times people say that, and we already know that the dating space is in a space right now that's very all over the place, very damaged compared to what it used to be, say back in the days, 20, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, whatever the case is. But you hear this being pushed around a lot that, there's this play phase. I'm going to tell you the reason why that concept is one that shouldn't be spread around, and it's one that a lot of people shouldn't listen to, and why it's important. Because though people might have the mentality, or women in specific might have the mentality that after, say, like, 30, 35, they're like, I'm done with my play phase. And you see a lot of them say this too, whether they're posting it on media or whatever the case is, like, oh, I'm looking for something serious now. I'm done with the games. What's not understood is that for a lot of men, after they hit 35, they now enter the play phase. And we're not talking about the player type of guys, because those guys are playing all the time. So if anybody jumps into the conversation in regards to, well, men are playing all the time, that's not true. Most men are not playing all the time. They can't afford to be that way, because only a small percentage of men are the type who are in that space, running around from a young age, whatever the case is, with a bunch of different women. The average man is not in that space. They're building this stuff up, and that's kind of what makes society move along. They're the ones to go get the job, this and that, and all that. We can go into a long conversation on this, but that usually derives from the need to create a family, have a family, be a good suitor, so they build themselves up. So the majority of men are not in that space when I say this. But even those men past the age of, like, say, 35, a good amount of them leave the serious phase to now be in a more play phase if they haven't already found something that they were able to build into a successful relationship at a time. Why is that? Because when they go into a build mode, generally speaking, a guy's going to go into build mode at a young age. And when you think of lifespans inside the world, not that our lifespan is the equivalent of, like, say, an animal, like, or like a lion or something like that. We're going to live past the age of like 20 years or something like that. But generally on that same footing, you go into build mode pretty early on, like 20 years old, you're looking to find a suitor, or even younger than that, you're looking to find a suitor, but we'll say about 2021 is when you can start maybe getting into that space of working. So now you can actually build for your family that you're trying to create. You're trying to find a suitor at that time, because it takes years and years to build yourself up. And so that's the time we're primarily trying to find a suitor, find someone you could be with, along with the fact that that's when women are at their, most fertile, their youth, and their most prettiest. Attraction. So all of that comes into play. What happens though is that build mode that a guy has, and that build mode happens whether he's with someone or not. He's in this kind of build mode. There's levels to the build mode, but he's still in that, I'm trying to find my career, I'm trying to get myself going. That energy that goes into that is not sustainable for very long. After you've done that for about, on average, we'll say 30 years of your life, so say from 20 to 50, you burn out. As a man, you burn out. And a lot of people don't understand the level of work that goes into that, because you have a lot of women too who might go into the workspace, and it's not necessarily the same. And I'm going to tell you why. Because when a guy's planning for that build phase for like a family, they're not just thinking, I'm making money. They're thinking about retirement. They're thinking about investments. By the time a guy turns, we'll say like 50, most guys are saying to themselves, I need to have ownership. I need to have multiple ownership. I need to have like establishment. I need to have enough resources that my kids' kids can have. I'm not saying every guy thinks that way or maybe goes into that action, but that's a lot of them do go into that space. Probably the majority of men are thinking of that space. They just need a lot of times the drive of someone to be building with. So it gives them that kind of motivation to go, okay, I have a partner. That means I can create a family. So I have to start building now. But the point is that phase is not sustainable for that long. You hit about 50 years old and you start getting on the downcline where you're like, I'm already burned out from that phase. You don't want to just start getting into your build phase at, say, 40 years old, because you know mentally and physically it's not sustainable. This is the reason why a lot of them will check out at that point. It doesn't matter if they tried their luck at a family. And we're talking about the ones who obviously not the ones who tried to have a family and everything went well, because they're obviously not on the market. But for the ones who either never started a family, or maybe they did and then they got separated and they have kids, whatever the case is. But the point is, even if they never started a family, their life was still building for that. They're burned out. So now if somebody comes along, a woman comes along and says, I'm done with my play phase, a lot of times men at that phase, will say 35 and up, 40 years old or up, get to a space where they're like, physically, I'm burned out from the build phase. I'm ready to settle down phase where I want to stop building. I want to just sit down. I want to relax. And obviously, once you come into that space of having a family, it takes work that the older man is not trying to as much do as the younger man would have done. Plus, you factor in, I just mentioned about age, getting older to do all that, but also the economy makes it hard as well, because either going into a second build phase of your life becomes almost nearly impossible, because when I say a second build phase, meaning that if you haven't got started before, if you know you're on the tail end of it, but if you went through something, maybe you got separated, you had a family before, now you're back on the market, and another woman, other women who are single or maybe back on the market are trying to look at you as a suitor, you may not be able to build a second time, because society, in terms of the economy and whatnot, plus your age and being kind of more on that phase where you're ready to kind of settle in and kind of stop, building, doesn't even allow you to really do that. So at that point, it's more likely that the guy is like, I'm ready to check out at that phase and just be in this kind of carefree phase. So the phases that the men and the women will be in really don't align when it comes to trying to have a play phase. This is one major reason why the play phase is something that not only people should not be spreading around as a recommended thing, but it's actually almost impossible, because it really destroys that concept of where each person is at. They should just build at the beginning and go for the journey. How you mostly would see older folks back in the days as grandparents would stay together for a very long time. What are your thoughts, you guys, on that concept of people passing around the words that they should have a play phase? What are your thoughts on that? I do think that for most men, it balances out, that if they were the type who had a quote unquote play phase, though it's not the same thing as for men as women, but generally speaking, if life is going to determine that they should not succeed in a relationship for having a play phase, life will determine that. As men usually adapt to the surroundings around them, they're usually not the ones who are dictating that when it comes to the dating world. We can go into that another time in a later video if you guys want. But anyway, you guys, just let me know your thoughts in regards to the play phase. Do you think it's something that is legit, that should exist? Do you think it shouldn't exist? What are your thoughts on it? And as always, you guys, like, share, comment, subscribe, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.